Today we're doing some inquiry from Sah D'Simone's book. Some of you are familiar with Sah D'Simone, and one of the things I love about his work and about him is that he has a really energetic way of working with trauma through the body, clearing it out through the body. And he also has a very deep meditation and spiritual practice and understanding. So when he talks about connecting and relating from the heart, he's talking about it as a daily life kind of thing, or relationships, emotions, and also from this base of liberation. He's defining liberation as freedom from conditioning. That's something that we work with all the time. We're conditioned to believe, for instance, that there's something wrong with us, that we're not lovable, that we're somehow deficient. And that's conditioning that happens through trauma. We're also conditioned into believing that we're separate body and mind, separate from each other. And in the meditation traditions, what we work with is realizing that we are not separate, in fact, that we're all one. So he talks about how to come to these realizations and have the freedom to rest in the present with a fresh mind and an open heart. Mind that's free from conditioning and an open heart that's trusting enough to connect with each other and with ourselves. So be a botanist of benevolence, of each other's basic goodness. And that's one of the main inquiries we're going to work with today, connecting with our own basic goodness as well as our friends or people that we care about, offering that wise compassion and skillful honesty to ourselves and to each other. And no matter where you are in this journey, you are worthy of love and connection. And that's so easy to go, yeah, I know that. And it's a lot of a deeper practice to realize that. This is how we look at these layers in yoga meditation. We have the pure consciousness, which is at the center of our being. And if we go out from there, we can look at that as the pure consciousness that we all are. When we kind of come in from that a little bit, we look at that as the pure consciousness that I am inside. As we go into heavier or more manifest layers, we tend to have a lot more stuff going on in there. So we have the body, which is the most solid layer, the body made of food, and we have tension in our body. We have experiences in our body, sometimes pain. We have then the pranamaya kosha, which is the layer of energy and breath. We have trauma stored in the body as energy and sensations. We have holding our breath, which is a trauma response that also signals to our nervous system that we're not safe. We have the lower level of the mind, which is the mind that is really affected by hypervigilance. A lot of the thoughts that we're attracted to or compelled to pay attention to are in this layer of the mind. As we work with the body, the energy, the breath, and the mind, that's when we start to be able to access our higher wisdom, our discernment, layers of limited pleasure and bliss, and to realize our pure consciousness. So this is what we're working with. Liberation is as simple as stabilized present moment awareness, is one of the ways he works with that in his book. Your mind is calm and concentrated. It's at rest. Let's just take that in for a moment. Stabilized present moment awareness. And you are where your body is. And when you're there, you have access to your heart. That makes so much sense. When we look at healing trauma, we're often dissociated or disconnected from our body, especially from our feelings. We close our hearts to protect ourselves. In this book, he's working with how to take care of our own needs and at the same time bettering the world so that it's not a selfish, I'm out for my own good only. When we're actually taking care of ourselves from a deeper level, it's actually beneficial for all of us. It's hard to truly accept others and to believe that others are innately good if you're withholding this from yourself. And this is something that, on a cognitive level, it's really hard to look around the world and say, I believe that that person, or I know, or I accept that that person has innate goodness, basic goodness. there's a lot of evidence that a lot of people are acting really harmfully. And if we look in our own personal life, we can find times, certainly I can, when I've acted unconsciously, just a lot of ways that caused harm. And I don't tend to have a fight response. So some of the harm that I was creating was more passive. I wasn't engaged in a way that I could have been, that would have been more ideal. When we have all of these core deficiency beliefs and the memories of our own behavior that we're not happy with, we might not be shaming ourselves for it anymore, but it's not ideal. And so when we look at that, it causes a lot of suffering. And one of the ways to work with that is to acknowledge that everybody suffers. Everybody feels shame at times. There's something about knowing that this is the way we are, this is a part of collective suffering, that somehow it eases that a little bit. It's not something that is deficient in me that I suffer. It's something that is going on with everybody. We want to control life. We want to be safe. We want the people around us to be safe. We want climate change to not be what it is. We want racism to not exist. We want social justice. We want happiness for people. And we can't control that. That's a really hard wall to run into. I know I've run into that one so many times, and I still do. I really want life to be a certain way. And I also recognize that that's just causing suffering. It's not something I can control. So let's pause here. Look at that beautiful picture of the cave with the light coming into the water. And we'll do some inquiry around ourselves first. I accept my inner goodness. My behavior is not who I am. I accept my inner goodness. My behavior is not who I am. Be aware of your body, of your breath. Could you shine a light into your own heart? At my core, I have basic goodness. And notice what's happening in terms of your mind might be arguing with that. You might have a shame storm. Notice what's going on. Keep yourself regulated. You could open your eyes. You could look around the room a bit. Get yourself kind of stable back in this moment in time. You might put your hand on your heart. Maybe it's something like, I'm cultivating realizing my own basic goodness. I'm willing to believe that that might be true. And as you inhale and as you exhale, let yourself kind of settle into that. Sometimes the inner critic comes in with a lot of evidence of behavior that wasn't ideal, maybe that harmed you, harmed others. When we look at the origins of a lot of that behavior, it's a trauma response. We're not letting ourselves off the hook. It's not relevant to the inquiry. Yes, we've done things that we regret, and I'm still willing to connect in my own heart with my own basic goodness. To at least entertain that as a possibility. Let your breath have some ease. Let your body be kind of soft. When we're working with something like this, it would be common to tighten up. Let yourself feel that light that's at the core of all of us, including you. And let it become more embodied and less thought based. Take a few minutes with this. And at some point, you could shift into bringing someone that you care about to mind. It could be a friend, it could be a child, someone that you are more accepting of their basic goodness. And when you think about them and bring them into your mind, into your heart, and you say their behavior is not who they are, it feels a bit easier to accept that, to know that that's true. Let yourself work with this for a while. I accept my friend, that my friend has basic goodness. Even though their behavior doesn't always reflect that basic goodness, I accept their inner goodness. Continue to breathe. Notice what's the same and what's different. If you're able to find more acceptance of their basic or inner goodness, see if you could extend that to yourself for a moment. I accept our basic goodness. Our behavior is not all of who we are. And our behavior in one particular moment is not who we are. And as we begin to open into that, we have more access to joy. Just like our suffering is collective suffering and we don't suffer alone, it's the same with joy. Our joy is the joy of the world. So it becomes our job to keep expanding and developing our joy. These again are quotes from Sah's new book. The purpose of relationship is to help one another evolve, to be mirrors for each other, to see the goodness in each other, and to enjoy one another. Let's work with this a little bit. Included a picture of this movie that's on Netflix, Mission Joy, Finding Happiness in Troubled Times, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It's a wonderful, honest, authentic documentary about connection and joy. I know I feel inspired when I've been watching that. So if we accept that it becomes useful to ourselves and others to develop our own joy and to cultivate joy in our own life and in our own friendships, check in with that. Does that seem reasonable? That if I become more in connection with my joy, that would be of use or benefit to the world? That if I can see the goodness in myself, I could see it in others, that maybe we could enjoy each other, we could enjoy our relationships. Let's work with these. I enjoy myself. And does that feel true? And it doesn't mean that there's not suffering. A lot of times when we're especially when we're healing trauma in the early stages or when something big's going on in our life, there might be a lot of suffering. But what comes up for you when you say that? I enjoy myself. I enjoy being with myself. I enjoy my own company. Or maybe I'd like to cultivate that more. And what about your friend that you're thinking about? And it could be more people in this one too. I enjoy my friend. I enjoy my friendship. Stay in touch with your body, your heart. How do you feel when you bring them to mind? What supports this enjoyment? and what gets in the way. Oftentimes, what gets in the way are the hypervigilant thoughts in the nervous system, looking at trying to be safe, trying to control, core deficiency beliefs, inner critic. Those things really get in the way of our enjoyment. A regulated nervous system supports our enjoyment. Dysregulation makes it harder. What comes to mind for you? I enjoy myself, my friend, my relationship. And try not to get engaged in any kind of inner critic stuff. We might think, well, I wish I had, or I blah, 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 blah. Just stay focused on, I'm willing to cultivate open heartedness and joy. I'm willing to enjoy myself, my life, people and beings around me, my friends, my relationships, nature, good movies like this one. I cultivate open heartedness and joy. Let yourself feel that in your whole body. I know that when I'm open hearted, I'm kinder, wiser, more compassionate, more connected. It feels like there's more of a possibility that it's true, my own inner goodness. You might have your hands on your heart. I cultivate open hearted joy. And that discernment to see beyond the lower level of the mind in particular, and core deficiency beliefs and inner critic. These are patterns that happen in our system sometimes. It happens to almost everyone in our culture where that's the conditioning that we have. And yet here we are. We're exploring this as a real possibility that I could keep connecting in and knowing for sure my own basic goodness, and feel that in your heart. Next Sunday, Sah is joining us. If you have a question, I'd like to see if we could specifically ask him about things in his book.